and Megan and Oprah. I'm sure they'll be happy. There goes the neighborhood. Hannity moved in. You know, I know we're not going to agree, but I just have a premise. I couldn't get 10% if I ran for governor in your state. Couldn't win 10% in New York either, where I live, unfortunately.
Maybe.
By the way,
if you change your policies, you can. I mean, you moderate them. You moderate them. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned so many times about the 1% paying the 50% of the state income tax.
We're proud of that.
Fair enough.
No, we're proud of those entrepreneurs. We're proud of those dreamers. We're proud of those risk takers. I'm a small business person. I've started 21 companies, 1,000 employees.
You're a great businessman.
No, but it's like this is in my DNA. I'm passionate about that.
So
California never held me back. It gave me every opportunity in the world.
Right.
All these folks, Elon Musk, Tesla, exists because of California's regulatory framework.
Why are they moving their headquarters out of here? You know why?
They moved their R&D headquarters back.
To save money.
They moved their R&D world headquarters back just 3 weeks ago. Why did they do that?
The list is a mile long.
Money.
You can pick out one company.
There's no state doing more in R&D than California. That's the answer.
These companies are leaving for one reason.
These companies are starting for another reason.
They're moving to increase their profits and save money because you tax too much.
Because we created the conditions where they flourished. And then they get to a point of maturity. And they get a point of becoming multinational companies.
And they leave. Why? And they move their headquarters.
Because
why?
some find greener pastures or are looking for defensive postures as it relates to economic risk. But there's thousands. We have 47% increase in business startups this year compared to last year.
Would you not acknowledge
acknowledge the seeds that are planted every single year? It's almost a point of success. We birth these folks. They move out of the house, and thousands more are birthed every single year.
So they build their companies here, and now all of a sudden they're paying that high tax bill.
They were always
so they move their headquarters away.
No, jeez. I mean,
by the way, do you support the idea?
This is the honest way to be the fourth largest economy in the world. What are you arguing for? Mississippi's economic policy? Does that mean literally that's what you're arguing for?
Me, if I wanted
the great Sam Brownback's Kansas policy, I mean, it was a debacle. No economic growth. 71% of the GDP in America are in blue counties.
I would
71% of the GDP in America are blue counties. Progressive policies.
Okay, that are paying high taxes and
71% of the country's wealth. 7 of the top 10 dependent states.
Let's say you're right. Let's say you.
No, we're subsidizing your states, Sean, because of your policies.
I'm in New York. You're not subsidizing anything for me.
But your philosophy.
I'm getting the hell out of New York, though. Mississippi, Alabama, I'm all for it over New York or California.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love Mississippi.
But what you say,
governor leaves me one.
I'm sure. Look, this is not personal.
No, none of it.
But the point is, they build their. Let's give you credit. You have entrepreneurs, Silicon Valley. By the way, San Francisco in the last 2 years lost 7.5% of their population. I'm sure you saw that article. But here's the point. I would argue these companies are leaving and they're moving their headquarters and they're moving employees and they're going through that expense because regulation, taxation, it is stymieing the incentives to build businesses here. Now, I would argue to you that if you lowered taxes and lowered your regulation standards, that California would be a net migration state. But I know you're not going to agree with that.
I'm passionate about regulatory reform. I've got 11 regulatory bills on permitting and procurement. I've never taken a backseat to anyone. I've reformed our CEQA bills. I've done it as it relates to vegetation, forest management, related forest fires. Again, I'm not an ideologue on any of this. I have not argued for increased tax rate for the top 1%. It's been around a decade. And look at the receipts.
You're not talking about lowering it.
Look at the receipts over the last decade in economic growth. We've outperformed most Western democracies. The state has grown, just like our American economy has grown by $4.4 trillion since Biden's been in office. Our global GDP continues to be dominant.
All of these
this country is doing remarkably better than I think a lot of your viewers believe.
Under no circumstances would you consider running for the Democratic nomination?
No.
None.
None. Not after this conversation.
No. What does this have a conversation? This is the worst interview you've had. That's a pretty. Listen, I want your passion. I'm just telling you, Joe Biden could not do what you're doing. And by the way, that ought to tell you something. And you know what? I know.
I couldn't do what he's done.
I know deep down.
I know in the last 2.5 years of results.
I know deep down inside, you know it's true. But you're a party guy. You're sticking up for your guy.
And
you know he's a cognitive
mess. I love
mess.
my president.
I don't dislike him. I just want him out of office.
Man of decency and character.
I want
love
somebody that
America.
can stand up to China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
He's doing, I think, a master. We've united NATO in ways it's never been united. Russia's never been weaker.
How would you have handled the Chinese spy balloon? What would you have done?
Oh, come on. You know what?
What would you have done?
I don't have the details of knowledge of the nuances.
Based on
and
what you
facts.
know, I would have taken that sucker out of the air before it even hit Florida
he may have
airspace.
put a lot of people's lives at risk when they originally talked about it, and there was a reason they delayed those first attempts to do that. I think his containment policy has been thoughtful as it relates to China.
Based on him taking out one of our drones? What would you do to Putin?
Acknowledge President Biden's policies are not completely dissimilar as it relates to China to what Trump was promoting as it relates to transfer of sensitive technology.
You know what? Ukraine wasn't invaded under Trump. China wasn't saber rattling.
Russia's never been weaker.
They're confronting
our alliance has never been stronger. G7's never been stronger.
They're confronting our Navy in the South China Sea and the Pacific. They're confronting our fighter jets in international airwaves. They're spying over our country. Drones are being taken out by Russia.
They're flexing.
And you know what Joe did?
Flexing around
you know
the
what
globe.
the consequences were? Nothing.
Yeah.
Would you allow nothing to be a consequence for China and Russia if they did that?
I think his policies against China have been very impressive in terms
of
in
what way?
In the context of building, ironically, on some of Trump's policies without all the bluster as it relates to tech transfer, as it relates to building alliances in the Pacific, as it relates to
building alliances. Their defense secretary rejected our outreach to meet with his counterpart.
You know, these are situational challenges that we've had historically around the globe as it relates to our
Navy
adversaries.
confronting our Navy.
Can we talk about 200 and these guys have less than $300 billion to spend every year on the military. America's at $887
They've been building up their military for a decade.
How many military bases around the world does China have, Sean?
The exact number I wouldn't know.
Djibouti,
we don't know.
One.
Okay.
We have 750. I'm worried about what's happening in Cuba.
Okay. China's now extended their sphere of influence in Africa, in Latin America.
They have one treaty arrangement, and that's in North Korea. We have 50 around the globe. I mean, it's apples and oranges. We spend 10 times more than the next 10 countries on military spend every year. Our alliances have never been stronger in places like Australia, which is the new Germany.
What about
all these are concerns?
If you were president and China
well.
wants to fulfill their territorial ambition and take Taiwan, what would you do?
I'm not going to get into that.
Why?
That's a more nuanced and complicated thing. That's for a presidential aspirant to answer. We have a policy. It's well articulated. I stand by the current American policy.
I think you're going to be convinced to be one, but that's my theory.
We can talk Ukraine next time.